So, in today's video on a Brit in Poland, I want to talk a little bit about the changing nature of the, let's say, immigrant slash expat scene in Warsaw. I want to give you my perspective from somebody who's lived here for 8 years now and am actively involved in the scene and have been for the last few years. When I first came to Warsaw, I pretty much stuck to my work colleagues, so predominantly Polish, some Ukrainian friends. And a few years ago, after COVID, I joined a trip for this group called Warsaw Global and have been helping them organize events ever since. So I want to reflect on some of my time being an organizer, some of the things I've seen over the years, and give people an idea of what it's like to be an immigrant in this current day and age in Poland. Dzień dobry and welcome to A Brit in Poland. With this channel, I travel across the country, I bring you the culture, and I show you just how amazing Poland is. So I invite you on my journey. If you want to see more, I have Facebook and Instagram profiles, which you will find links to in the description below. And if you want to really help out, you can turn to my Patreon or Patronite accounts, again in the description. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy this video. Please like, share and subscribe. Do zobaczenia. So I'm going to start pre-COVID. So when I first came to Poland, I didn't really know anything about the, let's just say foreigner scene to keep it simple. And one thing I could tell is I was a bit of a novelty. A lot of people would stop me to talk to me, you know, whether I was at some birthday or in a bar or something like that, because they wanted to speak to somebody who had an English accent, basically. They were very curious. There were a lot of questions. You know, everyone was asking, why Poland? You know, why are you here? How long are you staying? What do you think of the country? You know, everyone was very curious. And when I did start to go to some of the expat events, I did, let's say, about a year or so before COVID hit. There was quite a vibrant scene. I joined a group called Yedel, and every event I went to was packed full of people. I played badminton with them. I'd go for like drinking events, quizzes. You know, it was a really cool scene, actually. And though I did meet a few people, did have a couple of brief relationships as a result of that scene, I didn't really make any long-term friends from it at the time. And actually, I fell into a relationship shortly after joining that scene, so it kind of got a bit sidetracked. But definitely before COVID, there were, you know, a lot fewer foreigners in Poland, especially the English. And it felt like a lot quieter a place. But as we're going to explore, things definitely did change after COVID. So let's go into that section next. So COVID pretty much killed off all of the existing expat groups. You know, when effectively all they could do were online meetings for about a year, they all kind of dissolved. In fact, the organization Yedel that I was involved with, well, there was an even darker story there, because the organizers of that, I think, might be in prison now. I remember seeing a video where effectively their flat was raided for drugs. Yeah, it was a surprise. coincidentally, I think the organizer of that, no, was it Robert or was it Richard? Anyway, it was another Brit. I'm doing my best not to fall into the same lines. But yes, after COVID, we had, that kind of period where there were no real expat activities that I knew of. And we also, of course, had the Ukrainian war begin. And this is when a lot of influx came to Poland in the form of, millions of people escaping Ukraine. Primarily women and children, some men, but I think most of the men had been here already working. And suddenly the city began to feel a bit fuller. And it was about this sort of time that I discovered Warsaw Global, and I was quite excited to join another expat group because I'd changed jobs at this point and I had like a much smaller friendship group. And also I was a lot more interested in getting out, joining trips so that I'd have content for my videos. So the very first trip I went on with them was to Arcadia. But yeah, definitely it was a kind of a golden time, when people were starting to come out again. There were obviously some people that stayed a bit isolated and a bit shell-shocked after the whole COVID thing, but ultimately people were looking to breathe again. They were looking to get out in the sun again. And yeah, we started to run a lot of, let's say, successful events. At the time we were keeping things pretty small. We had like board games every week. We went to a place called Cyber Machina, which is this really cool kind of cocktail sort of bar in Warsaw and dotted throughout Poland. Actually, it originated in Katowice. And yeah, it was fun. We'd have like karaoke or the odd hike here or there. I think it was actually a hike was the first event I ran solo after a lot of guidance from the founder, Paulina. And yeah, so Warsaw Global was doing well. We had a lot of members, especially from, I'd say, the Indian community. They probably at that time comprised about half of our numbers. And yeah, when I came in, I had to institute some, let's say, strict rules on the chat policy because, well, some of these people weren't exactly being the most gentlemanly towards the women. There was a lot of like random messaging where they'd try and get phone numbers, try and get dates, and it got a little bit awkward for many people. And we started to go into the realm of trips, and we had a few, successful ones. We learned along the way because we were kind of new to organizing, shall we say, longer term trips. But we soon adapted the forms that we put together, made sure we knew all the questions we needed to ask in advance, give all the information that were commonly asked questions, all of this sort of stuff. But in the next section, let's talk about what happened and where groups like Warsaw Global are now. So after a time, we noticed a bit of a dip in numbers, which was a bit surprising because, the number of foreigners coming to Poland was going up, not down. And we started to wonder what was going on. At first, we of course blamed Facebook, where we promote most of our events. And I think a lot of the time the algorithm isn't really in our favor, which isn't helped by the fact that, like, the people in the group, they don't help us that much. They rarely even kind of click that they're interested or going on events. They often don't share the events on their groups. They, don't even like the posts that we put on. So no wonder we struggle to grow. And I'm going to sound a little bitchy, but a lot of the people are quite unhelpful in that field of things. When it comes to social media, me and Paulina are pretty much on our own.
Maybe that one came out a little frustrated. I just care about the community growing. No one owes me a click, of course, but small things like marking interested or just liking a post really do help more people see what we're doing. We're trying to build something here, and it's always good to have some help on that front.
We even designed a new logo, which my friend Anna helped to design. But we kept things going. We had like a loyal group of people, and we get the occasional new person popping in, so it wasn't a disaster. But there was this one event we used to do. We called it Sports Sunday, and we would hire out a sports hall, and we would play like volleyball and badminton, sometimes basketball, because I wanted to be more active, to be honest. A lot of the events tend to be geared around things that me and Paulina are personally interested in, because otherwise, well, we wouldn't be that interested in hosting the events. Luckily, we like a wide range of things. But we got to a point where we were struggling to meet, let's say, the quota. Sorry, I'm having to navigate a lot of mud at the moment because, well, we're at the end of February. Everything is thawing, but these woodland paths are saturated. So it's not the most fun walk today. So anyway, we had this Sports Sunday event, and we found that the numbers were dipping for that. And it was partly because there was another group or two that also started doing our event, and they were maybe undercutting our price by, like £1, maybe £2 at the most. So we're not talking like massive reductions, but another thing to learn about foreigners here is a lot of them are very price savvy, and they will just go for the cheapest deal, even if it's not the best experience. So we started finding numbers were dropping. We were having to spend more time promoting the event, and we got to a point where we started losing money on the booking. And we just at this point said, we're tired of this. It's too much work to do to make it a sustainable event for us. So it died. You have to let things go when they're not going the right way. But we kept on. All of the other events were just about keeping up. We've noticed that, like, things like board games, for example, where we once used to get like 30 people, now I think we're lucky if we get 10. And I was wondering about, why are we struggling? With so many foreigners in Warsaw, you'd think there would be a lot of lonely people, a lot of people looking to reach out and meet people. And then I realized, oh, they are. Of course, you get people that come and go. People stay in Warsaw for like a year or two, and then they move on to another country. Because Poland is kind of like you could say a gateway for a lot of people who want to emigrate to Europe and make money. Maybe it's, I don't know if it's really easier to get here, but maybe there was more of a job demand at the time. So you always get that kind of natural attrition. You get people who, fall into relationships, and so they no longer really feel the need to integrate because they have their kind of smaller, intimate social circles. So it's another natural attrition. But the numbers are still growing, and yet we're still seeing numbers drop. To the point where last night I was particularly annoyed. We hired out this space because we thought we'll have a nice easygoing event, something for anyone to join, and we maybe got like 15 people, whereas say a year or two ago we would have got 40. And I know some people are still depressed after the winter and still hibernating, so that could be one thing. But I did some digging, and to be honest, this has been on my mind for a while, because one of the other things that's going on is, well, people are segmenting into their own enclaves, shall we say, like ethnic enclaves. And this is what we see in Britain as well. The more immigrants you have, the less likely they are to integrate. So what we found now is, for example, the vast majority of the Indian community, we don't see at our events anymore. And we understand, when we've asked people about it, they've been like, oh, the temple is doing this and that. And effectively, like, people are hanging out with their own kind rather than trying to mix with internationals, which is a bit of a disaster for the future of immigration in Poland, because these people are not integrating. They're often not trying to learn the language. They are, some people I've heard never even really have a Polish friend or anything like that in their whole time of living in Warsaw or other Polish cities. And it's like, if you're going to move to a country, isn't that a bit self-defeating? It kind of shows the nature of it, that they don't actually care about the country they're moving to. A lot of the time they just care about the job, care about their own lives. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's the truth. People are inherently selfish, and they always look out for what's the easiest thing for them. Not necessarily what the best thing is for them, but certainly what the easiest thing is.
And just to be clear, I didn't want to criticize one specific community. It's something that happens with a lot of different people from a lot of different countries. And building community with people from your own culture, it's completely natural. I'm not criticizing that, but what I'm questioning is whether we sometimes miss opportunities to integrate more widely. And to further add, because there'll always be someone in the comments, yes, I am learning Polish. In fact, I've actually had hundreds of lessons. It's not easy for me, but it is something that I'm working on. And yeah, these videos aren't in Polish, but why would they be? These are meant to be for everyone.
And of course, you have other expat groups that pop up. I see a lot of promotion for other board game nights, language meetups, all these things on Facebook. But from what I gather, none of the groups is doing particularly well. They're all facing the same kinds of problems that we're facing. So the expat situation is turning a bit toxic, you could say, in Poland now, because if we're getting people that won't contribute to, let's say, the richer, wider life of things here, then why are they even here? That's a very harsh but very frank assessment, and one I say with more conviction because this is what's happening in the UK. So those people that do come out to integrate, I actually have a lot of respect for, because it takes a bit of courage to meet new people. And I wondered if another factor is AI. AI kind of fills a bit of a social void. I know for myself, there have been times when I haven't really had someone to turn to and talk about things, and I've turned to talk to AI, which some people may find strange, other people will find, quite normal now. And it made me think, well, if people are having certain social needs fulfilled by AI, maybe they don't feel the need to go outside and be as social anymore. But yes, essentially the expat group scene feels like it's in a hiatus. Of course, it's seasonal as well. You know, we're entering springtime now, so I expect we're going to see numbers go up as the weather gets better, as we do more stuff outside. But for sure, we can say that it's been a tough winter, and we've cut back on the number of events we do because we don't like wasting our time. And to be honest, running this group does sometimes feel like a waste of time, but not all the time, of course, or else we wouldn't keep doing it. Okay, so I think I pretty much covered what I want to cover in this video. I'm curious if you're also running some kind of expat group, doesn't have to be in Poland, but wherever you are, if you're noticing similar trends, whether you've had any successful tactics to help boost numbers. Yeah, we're trying new things, and we're going to keep putting out events that we think people will find interesting. But I'll just say that actually being involved in Warsaw Global has been quite a good motivation for me, because it's something that's kept me busy, it's kept me active, kept me social. A lot of these things are difficult to do on your own. I've also been able to do a lot of events that I've wanted to do, things like bowling or hiking or laser tag, all kinds of different events that when you have a big group behind you are a lot more fun and a lot more accessible. And the trips that we've been on have been quite inspiring, you could say. They've made a big difference to the content of my channel, and yeah, it's been cool. But yeah, I mean, things on the immigrant landscape in Poland are set to change again. One thing we're having happen, I don't know what the impact of this will be yet, is let's say the special accommodation for Ukrainians is running out, which might mean that more people from Ukraine leave the country. I think they're starting to tighten some of the laws surrounding immigration as well. So that could also be a change. And maybe we'll see numbers of new people dropping. If you're in Warsaw and you're watching this video because maybe you'd like to meet new people or become part of a community, then naturally I recommend Warsaw Global to you. And as always, we have a lot of fun events, trips, experiences coming up. But if you're outside of Warsaw and maybe you're a fellow event organizer like myself, maybe you've seen the same kind of patterns in your countries. What are your experiences like? Are you seeing the same sort of issues? And perhaps you have some suggestions. Maybe you have some killer event ideas that have really helped you to get people together. I don't know. We always are happy to take advice. But yeah, I hope that the what on earth was that noise? Oh, it's a speedboat or something. Okay, so yeah, we're going to keep plowing on with Warsaw Global for the time being. I think we'll always have a few people, and we have a lot of, let's say, loyal and dedicated people in the group who make a big difference. Now and again, they even help us host events. So it's not all doom and gloom. But yeah, I think that'll do me. Actually, I'm on my way to an impromptu barbecue at the moment. I'm curious to see if the sun that we're finally getting and the warmer temperatures will actually bring people out, or whether people continue to stay inside. All right, that's enough whinging from me. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to know more about Warsaw, Poland, or this little Brit here complaining about Poland, sometimes mostly complaining about the UK, then feel free to subscribe. Otherwise, please like the video and help us get the message out about weary organisers in Warsaw Global. Do zobaczenia. See you soon.